Hello and welcome to my video. This one's a little bit unusual in that you're not going to see me start this from the beginning. This is obviously something I've already done, but I'm not over happy with it. It's okay in some parts, but other parts it isn't. I don't like all of this bright greeny yellow or yellowy green, so I'm going to be sort of fiddling around with that. And while you're listening to me talking, I'm just tell you what I'm doing. I'm just getting some colour on my palette, getting sap green as usual. Funnily enough, I said I'm going to get rid of this colour, but in fact I've just put some more on my palette because I'll need some to get rid of what's on there, if you see what I mean. You won't see what I mean, possibly, because that didn't make any sense at all, but it will in a minute. What I'm trying to say is I'll be using it to mix with something else, to show a toned down version of it. Now, bits of this painting that I do like, when I get the top off this tube, I'm never going to get that top off, not without a hammer. Anyway, I'll come back to that one. I like this area between that point and this point here. That's sort of quite interesting. Most of it being accidental. Try another tube that I can actually open. I'm trying to open a red ochre tube. Now, let me just give you the dimensions of this, because I don't know whether you can figure out how big it is. You can see the size of my hand actually on it there. I worked it out a few minutes ago because I just put it on Facebook, and it is 47.25 inches that way, so 47 and a quarter, and just under 38 inches deep. That's a fair size. It's much bigger than my usual size that I work to, and every now and then I do like to work quite large. In fact, what I would like to do is work on something 4 times this size. That would be fun. But until I find somewhere to actually do it, you know, because you need space obviously around you to do something that big. Anyway, so what other colours am I getting out here? I'm getting, I've got some red ochre. I'm put a little bit of Payne's grey in it. There's already some in the sky, but I want to, well, you should know by now, I shouldn't even have to say anything. Maybe I should make a video where I just don't speak. No, I'm kidding. I want to show even more drama, so I'm going to chuck a whole load of grey in that. And in fact, I've just added 2 squirts to my palette. I usually only have 1 squirt. Now, it looks on the video like quite an interesting sky, and it's not so bad. I'm not unhappy with it, but what I want to do, I want to extend the land further and further away. So I'll be lifting that up a bit, so that it sort of really takes you off into the distance. And we'll see how that goes. So until before I start putting the land up into the sky, I'm going to paint a bit more sort of stuff. That's the technical term that we use, stuff in the sky there, so that when I bring the land up, they can meld together. Now, the other thing you may notice, well, you probably have by now, as soon as I touch this thing, it starts to move. I'll hold it as still as I can. It's probably at the absolute limit for the size of my easel. I could get another easel in here next to it, but it's quite a rigmarole doing that, so I'm going to try and get by doing it this way. So I'm going to darken the base of the sky because I want the land to disappear into a storm. So I've got Payne's grey, ultramarine blue, and a little bit of oil, and I'm just going to whip along the, in fact, a little bit more oil. I'm going to whip along the horizon, see what I can do. I usually find when I'm doing things like this, that I look at the colour as it goes on and I think, ooh, that's, you know, I know this is the sky, but sometimes when you do things like this, it looks like mountains. But I don't want mountains. But it's just something that sort of happens. If I do that, along there you see you've got almost like a mountain range with a few sort of light areas in the foreground, but I'm going to lose that effect. So a little bit more oil, and then after this is basically a bluish grey, obviously, as you can see, and I'll put that on there. I'm not worried about right next to this because I'll be pulling that into that. So this bit here is dry. That bit there between this darker and the green, that's dry. I'll keep that dry for a reason, and it'll all become obvious. And I'll tell you what I'm doing when I get to it. I'm sure I'll be in the way because it's difficult for me not to with a painting of this size. And I've got the camera set over to the side slightly, so it shouldn't be too bad. People have asked me if they can see my cat. I always like it when people say that because, you know, I like cats. I like all animals, but I seem to have a thing with cats, or they seem to like me anyway. And if I can get her to come in here later, I'll show you what Madam looks like. But if I can't get her in, you'll see some of her on my sweatshirt thing, t-shirt, top, whatever you call it. So here, let's see what we can do now. You notice, or you may not notice, what I did there. This is a little trick I do. So I'm putting on this colour and I want to bring it into this. Now this is all completely dry up here, but I want to bring it into that in an interesting way. I don't want to just blend it so it suddenly turns into that. That's boring. But if you can sort of put the odd wisp along the top edge of this darker colour, when you come to put more colour on top, and I will be adding a little bit more twinkle up here, you'll find that they'll be joined together in a more interesting way. And you'll see that in a sec. In fact, you might see a little bit now. I've got another brush here. It's got sort of blue stains on it, but I don't think it's not wet paint anymore. So I'm just going to get some white pretty well straight from the tube. It's not a lot of paint. It's quite dry. In fact, there's no oil in that. You know, you can do this. Not a lot happens. There's a few spots, but I don't care because I'm going to use them. So let's just pull that around a bit. It's all about relaxing and having fun. In fact, here I'm going to do a few shapes. Okay. What should we do? Let's take a little bit. I'm going to take some up that way, maybe. Quite like that dark band there. You can almost see the entire top of the painting. Well, let me just. Oh no, you can't. There's quite a lot missing. Okay, so that's as far as you can see. So above that point, there's also the width of my hand. I'll move the camera up in a second. But at the moment, I'm sort of working down here anyway, so it won't matter. But it is a big sky. What should we do? I think we'll... All right, so this is well, it's almost my usual way of doing a sky, except I'm not putting the white on with a palette knife yet. I will in a minute. I'm going to put some, I think we'll put a light streak over here. And you may be wondering now why, what's his reason? What's the reason for that light streak? Well, there is no reason. It's just that I think it would look good. And you've got to learn to listen to your inner voice on this. And if you don't trust your inner voice, just keep listening to it. One day it'll know. And it'll point you in the right direction. Oh, something there could be interesting. And that's the only reason you need. You know, you can come up with all kinds of deep, meaningful reasons for doing something in a painting. But, you know, the end result, what we're after, is something that looks, and this is maybe, some people will say, this is an oversimplification. It's just got to look good. If you strip away all the BS that some people come up with regarding paintings, there doesn't have to be a deep and meaningful reason other than it looks good. And that's what I have to say, and this is where I've got to be a little bit careful. I've always wondered what the point is of art critics. Now, a lot of art critics usually are not artists. Maybe they wanted to be artists. Maybe they studied art at university, history of art, all that sort of stuff. And I'm sure some of them can have a good, you know, and valuable opinion about what's good and what's not so good. But, you know, when you think about it, it's only down to their personal preferences. Is it important? Is it even slightly important? I don't know. I think it's down to whoever. Well, I'll have to move that camera in a minute. It's down to whoever wants to buy the painting. If the picture pleases them, that's all well and good. That's exactly what the artist really wants. And of course, you want to sell your painting. You know, I don't sell many paintings because, quite frankly, I can't be bothered. I'd rather just do these videos. I earn some money from YouTube, obviously, so I'm not that bothered about whether I sell paintings. Maybe it doesn't matter. But with me saying that, don't let that put you off. If you want to buy a painting, you know, well, if you want to buy this one, for instance, just contact me. And what usually happens, I find this happens a lot, is that people ask you, they say, oh, I want to buy that painting. And they hear the price and they say, okay, yeah, I'll get back to you on that. And then they don't. But of course you do get some people who obviously do have the cash. I would, you know, if I could, I'd sell these off really cheaply. And I'm being absolutely honest, just because sometimes people say, you know, oh, I'd like that, oh, I really like that painting in my living room or wherever. And I have actually sent people paintings just because I like what they say. There's no what you call it? There's no catch. I just sometimes give paintings away. It's only about once or twice a year, but Although if I did give this one to anyone, it would you'd have to pay the postage, because that would be quite high on something this size. Anyway, I think that's sort of perking the sky up a little bit. And my point is with all this is that, you know, I just want to show you how actually it isn't that difficult. You know, I'm using my usual big cheap brush. Almost throwing the paint on, because I'm covering quite a large area here reasonably quickly. So yeah, admittedly some of it was already on there, of course, but it still gives you an idea of how to go about it with a certain amount of wild abandon. And it's fun. One of the most important things about painting, particularly a painting like this, you know, relax, have fun. I hope I'm not on the way too much here. Probably am, but there you go. Okay, so that's a nice dark, threatening bit of cloud. I think it might even get darker in a minute, but we'll see. Now then, all this stuff down here. I'll just give you a quick glimpse of the top. So that's what we've got at the moment up there. And I might even be going back to that later. But for now, let's go back to the actual landscape, and I'll get the camera right down and put that somewhere in the middle of the picture for you. And then figure out what we're going to do. What are we going to do? Let's make it slightly bigger. Okay. So now I want to work on the grass. Basically, I'm going to work on the veg and bring it up to the sky. Just go and grab another brush over here. Okay, so this is a completely unused brush. And I think I'm going to put quite an oily dark green wash. I say wash, I mean it's oil paint, but if it's watercolour, it would be a wash. If it's an oil painting, I guess it's an oil. I'm going to put an oil, that sounds silly, doesn't it? You know what I'm on about anyway. I'm going to put some oily paint on that. And it's basically just sap green. Not adding the light green yet. And as I mix it up, I'm looking at it and I'm wondering, what is this going to do? How will it interact? Will it completely ruin my painting? And I'll tell you the way around that, so that you don't worry about it, is to just get some on the brush and just do it and just see what happens. And that's what it does. That's what it does. It's not a big mystery. All it does is put on a dark green over the light green. Now, I'm not awfully keen on that, all that yellow, as I said at the beginning, I think. So I'm just going to mute it a little bit, or quite a lot, depending on how I feel, because I don't know how I feel until I actually get to that part of the painting. And I'm sure some landscape painters cringe when they hear that, because they think, oh, you know, you've got to know what you've got to work out your composition. Well, you know, maybe you have to. I tend to do mine as I go, And that's purely through years of practice where I've had to compose stuff in front of people as I think. So I don't really fret about it too much. I know I'll manage it somehow. Always do. Now, this green here, okay, so that's what's happened with that. It's quite interesting. I'm going to attempt to zoom in on that so you can see what I'm talking about. Otherwise, some of it may not make sense because it's such a big painting and you're seeing it from a distance. So I'm going to loosen my camera. Let's see if we can do this without jumping around too much. Okay, so if you look in there, the brush, the bristles on the brush, actually made those lines that you see coming across that field. Now, the other way to do that is with a small brush, hoping you're going to get them all lined up. But of course, if you have these marks on your brush, bristles, let's see how long that takes to focus. As you can possibly see, well, it may focus. I know I've got it on autofocus, so there we go. Right, see, now, you'll notice that the bristles on the brush are quite uneven on the tip, and that's the sort of brush I like. You can get brushes like this one, which I don't think I've ever used. Basically nylon, and it's just a little bit too, solid. I like the up and downiness of this kind of brush. So anyway, so that's one of the effects that you can get quite quickly, purely by dragging the brush gently over the surface, like so. Once you've got that on there, you see, you can now get a piece of tissue, paper, well, tissue paper, paper towel, and then I may like that on that field, and maybe the one behind it, but not the one down here, so I can just take that off. And I can flatten it. So it looks as though either there's so much light hitting it that it cancels out the bands in the field, the stripes, or whatever. The brain will figure out something as it looks at it. And so long as it's sort of pleasing and contrasty, your brain will be a happy bunny. So that's one way, anyway, of tricking the eye. So what do I want to do? What do I want to do? I don't know why I'm asking, because I never answer it. And as I said, I want to start taking the land up into the sky. Right, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to just zoom back a touch so you can see more of the actual landscape. And I'm going to just turn the camera that way. There we go. Right. So to get the land to go up, I'm going to need to add light in the distance over there. So off we go. This is fun now, because I don't know what's going to happen. I know that the green I'm going to put on is going to be a little bit too bright, but that's okay. That can be tweaked and twiddled with. So over here, let's do this without getting in the way. There's a little bit in there. And then let's have some right up in the sky here. Because it's not going to be the sky. If I put enough of that in the sky, it will cease to be sky and it will be distance. Hope so, anyway. I do one thing I do know, and I think maybe I plan certain things subliminally. I know that this light green, you see, when I put it on there, won't stay light green. As it mixes with the grey in the sky, it changes. So in other words, it's changed from this bright stuff here to that bright stuff there, which is still bright, it's just different. And I'm just going to keep going with that. I was looking at this, obviously, before I started painting, thinking to myself that the landscape was too small for the size of the sky. Now, you can get away with that. If the sky is absolutely wonderful, then it doesn't really matter. It's almost like the land is just a little token thing at the bottom, but I do like all these different textures and things that you can get in a landscape. So I'm more than happy doing this. I've now got some dark green because I want to see what happens. So I'm going to put some up here. Oh yeah, I like that. And I think this is the bit I find really fascinating in a picture. The way these all start to work together, some of these shapes. That's particularly the accidental bits like that, which you can probably see from there, but there's a nice light bit with a dark bit and then a neutral bit, and they just all work quite well together. And I think we're going to have something there. And again, that's just one of these compositional things that I just sort of, I don't know what's the word, I sense that it will be good. And it usually seems to work out quite well. One thing I've noticed as I've got older is that I get more paint on my hands. Now, either that's because I'm just turning into a clumsy old fool, or it's just that I don't care. And I tend to think it's a bit of both. Right. Let's have some light on that way up there because it'll look nice. See, I keep saying that, don't I? Do it because it'll look good. Yeah, so you can see now the land, it's almost like a phantom bit of land appearing up in the sky there. None over there yet, but you can see it starting to appear. And it just gives you, you know, more feeling of distance in your painting. So let's just get that on there. Keep out of the way. Let's try it this way around. Maybe that will help. Yeah, that's not so bad. I did warn you that it would be wobbling around, didn't I? And wobble it will. Okay. Now, a little bit of dark. Basically, I'm using two greens here. You know, one called light green and one not. One's sap green, and the other is just called light green. And the land magically appears. I'll do a little bit of fiddling on that in a minute with a brush, possibly. Unless I decide I'm happy with it as it is, then I'll just leave it. Okay. Now then, there's a tree here. Or is it a tree? It could be one of those blobs. You know, the sort of blob you get on a landscape. So, do I like it? Well, I don't actually dislike it. I just think it might be a little bit too smooth on the top. So let's muck it up a bit. Turn it into something else. Don't know what it is, but it goes off across that field. It's a thing in the landscape. I might let's just chuck some light on there as well. Who knows what it'll be? Not really sure. A lot of this colour here has got red ochre in it, and I like some of it, but I don't know whether I want quite that much. Maybe I'll come back to that with a brush in a moment. So, let's see. I'm going to put some more darkness over there because I can't just leave it hanging. It's got to come to a conclusion. And some of the light blue that was already in there, I might leave that because it just looks nice. Don't know what it is, but it looks nice. Okay. And what should we do? As I said, I like that bit down there. It sort of appealed to me. Maybe I'll leave those bits yellow, except for that one. Don't like that. Don't think I like that down there either. At least knock them back a bit. And in fact, I can see something else I want to knock back. And that's this stuff here. I might turn that into a tree. In fact, I will. I'll do that with a brush. This stuff here, I'm still not happy with it, so I'm going to just put some green all over it. And then put some dark green all over it, and then put some light green through there. That's quite interesting. And a little bit there. You see, if there are bits that in a painting that you really don't like, you can just make them vague so that the eye will skip over them and just not give them a second glance. What am I going to do there? I think I need a light bit here. Okay, it's working reasonably well. And I think I want to do some distance stuff. Now this palette knife, it's quite a good shape, but I'm going to use this one. As you can see, much longer. There they are, side by side. Now the reason I want to use the longer one is so that I can get long shapes in the distance over here. I could do short lines with that one, but I think I want to do some long lines. And I think they're going to be green. So I've just put a bead of paint along the edge of my palette knife, literally just dragging it through a lump of green. And I think, let's just see what we get. You can barely see it. I'll make it so you can see more in a minute. a little bit more. It's just a touch. And the other interesting thing I find, particularly when you're working over a painting that's dry, is you get, when you do this technique here, you get lines, but you also get sort of little spots, quite random spots, and they look interesting. How much are we losing of the edge of that painting? I wonder. See that? Oh no, it's okay. I was just thinking out loud. If you can see my fingertips there, there's only a little bit that you're not seeing. So in fact, let's not faff about. Let's just make it so you can see it. It's just a little bit there. Okay. And again, just a quick drag through the light green, just for some lines. Quite subtle. Might do, yeah, I think I'll do something, a little bit more paint there. I think it needs a little something there. Good. This is sort of on the edge of, I suppose, tonalism, impressionism, and a certain level of abstract. And some of this is, you know, just shapes. But if you think about, you know, a painting, what is a painting? I mean, it's just shapes, really, isn't it? Organised shapes, and some of them not awfully organised, because I think it is, in a way, a little bit more magical when the viewer has to do a bit of work. I don't mean like as in hard work, I mean things will be presented to them as they look at it, and it's up to them how they interpret it. And one day it may look like one thing, and another day it'll look like something else. That's when you get the little hint of magic in a painting, I think. If it looked the same every single day, I think that would be a little tedious. Okay, now, going to be putting some tree bumps in there soon. So I think still want to take it further up into the sky. And so that's what I'm going to do. And it'll be very, very, very distant stuff. If I can get it to actually come off the palette knife. There we go. Okay. Now then, something bugs me about those trees. And I'm just asking myself, are they too dark? Do they need to be that dark? Actually, the more I look at them, the more I actually quite like them. So I might leave it for a minute while I carry on thinking about it. So this is now sap green on the brush, no oil added. And all I'm going to do with this is hover over that while I think about it. Let's just put a few bits of green on, maybe for later. Okay, so let's have some bumps and shapes. So I'm going to have something there. And why not? Let's zoom in a bit for you. I should really do this, I think, because when I zoom in using the editor, you know, my video editor, I zoom in and you see a digital representation of the image stretched a bit, you know, to make it bigger. Whereas if I do this, it should be better quality if I just actually move the camera closer. And I'm going to just move that a little bit more. To there. Okay, so you can see the edge of the painting. And let's see. I think we'll have, so we've got, these I just added, those two. These are the ones I think are too dark. I'm sure you can see that on the camera, yep. But there's also something about the shape I don't like, so I'm going to change the shape of the tops of these just to soften them a bit. I think that might do it. Yeah, I think that's better. And then I think down here we'll just carry on this hedge thing. Take it right to the edge. There we are, trees without painting trees. No tree trunks or twigs or branches were painted. So slightly to the right of this now, I think we'll continue the theme. We'll have something there. Something in the foreground here, just a little bit. And a quick movement of the camera again, just so that you can see it again, what I'm talking about. Okay. So I got one, yeah, right, okay. So I've softened that thing. I've got this one, which is another one of those hard blobs, which I'm not awfully keen on, so I'm just going to just soften that a little bit with a few touches. Same there. And then some green on the brown, because I think I might have overdone the brown. Ah yes, that's nice. Another bit of camera moving. Slightly, I don't know, heathland type look to it, but I just think there may be too much brown, so I'm just going to pull in a little bit of green. Like so. And I think something there. Even if it's just like a sort of ghost image, it still can work quite well. Okay, now, question is, do I want to do anything more to the sky? I think I'm reasonably happy with the landscape now. Now, as you can see, it's quite a towering sort of sky. And I think I'm going to just take that up. So. I'll just basically freehand it a bit. This is like, you know, freestyle swimming, except there's no water involved. And just do what feels right, basically. And in a moment I'll be going over it with a dry brush, just to smooth it a little bit. Reasonably, oh no, so I know what's going to happen now. I can see it. People will look at this. Everybody suffers a little bit from pareidolia, where you see shapes in the sky. I see one wing, the second wing, and the head of a very mad chicken running that way. Here's its foot, there's its tail. I don't know why I do this, but anyway. There we are. There's the comb on its head. I might actually leave it. Who cares? Maybe a giant mad chicken rushing through the sky is what we all need right now. Okay, now, am I going to add any more colours to the sky? Big question. I just happen to have on my palette some Japanese red, and I'm just going to shove a little bit of that onto the main part of my palette so that it goes into the white, which I've been using, which is titanium white, of course. It's the white that pretty well everyone uses. I think I've got to have a little bit of a hint of warmth in the sky. So I'm just going to put a tiny hint. It'll diminish in a minute when I go over it with a dry brush. Just a little touch of red. That's probably it. Okay, dry brush time. So this is a dry brush. The sound is me getting the bristles out that we don't want. There's always some in there that are going to fly out, so it's best to get them out while you're before you're painting. Okay, so dry brush, and here we go. Just a skim. There isn't much paint on there. What I've been putting on today on the sky is quite dry, so it's not dripping. And all I'm going to do is just smooth it a little bit, like so. And just take the edge off it. And in a moment I'll be putting on some more white. Funnily enough, you might think this is it, but it isn't. I'll be putting on a little bit more white and doing the same thing again, only in a few places. I'm not going over the whole thing. And you'll see the effect that'll have. It'll give some bits of the sky some really bright white spots. And hopefully that will be it. Before I do the palette knife white, I just want to have a go with the corner of a brush, just along here, but I'm pacing back and forth first, because I find that sometimes if I pace back and forth I get better results. Oh. Okay, so there's a few little horizontal clouds along there. You know, but every now and then just chuck in the odd thing like that, and then soften it, and it'll add a bit of life to your painting. Okay. Now, this is so over there. It's sort of interesting. It's that's my dark area, obviously. It speaks for itself. It's the dark bit. And that's because even though contrast is needed in a painting in small places like these down here, you know, it makes it sort of jump around in your brain a bit, but also the overall picture. You know, dark side, light side. Although it does get a bit dark up that top left corner as well, but I'm not sure that I'm worried about that. Generally, I think it's sort of coming together quite nicely. And I'm just thinking what I'm going to do over there. And I think with an almost dry brush, I'm just going to sort of exaggerate this in here, just to give it a little bit of depth. What you want to avoid, you see, if you're doing anything like this, is a dark cloud that's just black, you know, with no tone in it. It's got to have some tone, so that it looks round, you know, because all clouds tend to be that way. And it also gets a bit of movement in it too. This is something I'm asked often. How do you get movement in clouds? Well, this is how. Keep your brush lively. Look for the sway and the swell. You see, there's a definite push through there. So, you know, cash in on it, exaggerate it a little bit. Just make it work. So if it breaks here, it starts again over there. Okay. Gives you the feeling it's gone away and then it's come back. Hopefully. Anyway. So right, so I've just got a little bit more white on the brush, and just for the heck of it, because I like this effect, I'm going to move the camera again. Up there in that corner, something I like doing, and that is to just put a little bit of a surprise just before you leave the painting. Like so. And then dry brush. That's all that needs. Okay, now then. So there we are, we've got our sky. That might be it for that bit of blending. And I think the next thing now is just, as I said, a little bit of a touch or two with a palette knife with just pure white on it. And now where am I going to put it? It may not matter that much, but I'm thinking, I mean, we've got a light spot up there. I'm thinking we've got light here. So let's maybe have our intense bit of light just in there. So all you do is just put some paint on like that. Now you could almost leave that. I won't, but I mean you could. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it because I think I've done that in a rather unique way, and that is a rubbish way. So I wouldn't leave it like that. I'll just make it feather it around a bit so it's a bit more interesting. Okay, so they're quite sort of intense bits of cloud there. And all I'm going to do, almost completely dry brush, just soften it just a touch, barely touching it. All I want to do, you see, is blur it slightly. I don't want to move it around the painting. I think that might be it. Let's just take away that hair that we don't want there. Gotcha. Sometimes taking the hair off that's fallen off your brush can actually improve your painting. There we go. And I think that might be it for this one. So before we go, let's do all the other stuff I usually go on about. If you want to do lessons with me on Zoom, the link will be in the box below, or go to my website. That link is also there. Or go to my Facebook page. Again, there'll be a link to that too, and that will tell you about lessons that are coming up. And often will give you the sign-up link for that particular lesson. I have a Patreon page. If you are a patron via my Patreon page, you get a reduction to the cost of the lessons. And the other thing I do is I'm just starting to teach people in France, so you can actually come here and have as long as you like. 1 day if you want, 5 days. 5 days is usually the maximum. Yeah, you come here. You'd have to find yourself a B&B. I mean, I can point you in the direction of some B&Bs. Unfortunately, I can't actually put people up. So yeah, I'll put as many links in there as I can. So I hope you've enjoyed this, hope you've learnt something. And you must admit, if you're continually watching my videos, hopefully by now you'll realise that clouds are not difficult, and you can get some quite spectacular results quite quickly without too much effort. So take care, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.